was in the Navy. I was a nuclear reactor operator in the Navy, and first of all, I failed in high school pretty badly, and I had to escape my hometown. So I joined the Navy to get out of my hometown, which was Gallup, New Mexico. It's a really small town on Route 66, and I didn't want to get stuck there because my high school grades were really bad, and all my friends were going off to college, and I was going to be pumping gas at a gas station because I had no skills. And so I panicked and I joined the Navy, and I went for 6 years, and I became a nuclear reactor operator. And when I got out, I went back to University of New Mexico, which is where I'm from. And over the course, I started working in the student aid office, and I noticed there were all these cool 3D courses coming up. And I was studying to become a nuclear reactor operator. I was still in nuclear energy at the time because I wanted to make money, and I didn't want to be broke. That was the thing. And so I noticed all these 3D courses, and I had to take some electives. And so I decided to go ahead and sign up for one of these. And one of the benefits of working in student financial aid was you could sign up for anything, anytime, without waiting in line. And so I signed up for this 3D course. I didn't even know. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And then when I showed up that day, there was a line around the block to get in that class. And I thought, oh, I got really lucky because I kind of used the system to get into this class. So I better appreciate it. This might be a cool class because everybody wants to take it. And it was actually, it was this instructor who had just been learning 3D on the West Coast and came and was going to teach us Maya. It wasn't even Maya. It was Alias Wavefront. Didn't even have a name yet. This is 1995. Yeah. And the licenses were like $50,000, and they ran on these O2 old Sun system machines. And so you had to sign up for it on a sheet so that you could log in and get time on the computer. And because I was slow, I always was going in at 3 a.m. in the morning, from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. because I didn't get to the sign up sheet on time. But yeah, and we got a big old 3-ring notebook with, a digital photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of Alias's documents. And in the end, all I really ended up making was this kind of, I took a bunch of NURBS primitives and kind of put them together on bones and gave it teeth. And it was like a shark. And I just made this shark swim through the water and then swallow the camera, right? And that was all I did. But there was a woman who was 60 years old, and she was retired. And she was there all the time. And anytime somebody didn't show up for their signed up spot, she took their spot on the computer and just worked on her project. And at the end of the year, we're all showing our projects. And there was one hot shot in the class who's like, I'm going to Pixar after this. I was like, what's Pixar? I didn't even know what Pixar was. and so everybody shows their things. And then the 60-year-old woman showed her bit, and it's a camera fly in from outer space. It flies into a city street. There's buildings. There's a volcano in the background with lava and particles and smoke and fire, and the ground has rigid dynamics. And I was just like, what the heck? When did you have time to make this? And she's just like, well, I'm retired. I just hang out here in the lab, and when nobody's on a machine, I just hopped on. And I was blown away because I think that was the first time I realized you could actually do something like that with a computer. It just blew me away. So after that, I took a video editing course at UNM, and I was also blown away. I was like, this is amazing. And so I started putting 2 to 2 together, and I was like, I'm not a nuclear reactor operator. There's no doubt. So I transferred to San Francisco State Film School because I was stationed in the Bay Area in San Francisco for years. I had friends there, so I moved back there, went to film school. And during film school was when the .com crash, or the .com buzz, was happening. So I was in film school, and I was working at the student bookstore, and I worked in the software department because I kind of understood computers, and not a lot of people did at that time. And this copy of Flash came in. Somebody hated the game, hated the software Flash, and they returned it, and they were angry. And what we would normally do is just throw out the software. Like, it was opened, nobody else would buy it. So I would take home this open software, and I installed Flash on my machine, and I decided to learn it. And I forgot about it. And then a few years pass in film school, and I'm about to graduate, and there's all these jobs in the .com industry for Flash programmers and Flash animators, and they're making like $80,000 a year. And I was like, what? I know Flash. I have this software. So I went back, pulled up together the real weakest of demo reels I could in Flash, got a job doing Flash for a long time, and I worked at Digital Think, and we were doing stupid stuff for like McDonald's and Pete's Coffee, and but it was a gateway into Flash, and I learned how to code an action script. And then that market started getting saturated. There was everybody and their dog was learning Flash, everybody. And this website called guru.com showed up, and you couldn't get work. There were, anytime you were trying to make good money, there was somebody in India that would do it for $10 an hour or $5 an hour doing the Flash work. So you couldn't get any jobs. Everybody was hiring India, and everything was outsourcing to India. So during that time, I borrowed $9,000 from a friend, and I said, I want to go to Nomon. And he said, so he lent me $9,000. He was a rich banker. So he lent me 9,000. I had to pay it back, but he lent it to me, and I went to Nomon, the fast track. And then I came back, and I was going to work at Digital Think again because they needed a veteran. They were working for the US government. Mm-hmm. And one of the requirements is that they had to have at least one veteran on staff. So I was the one veteran working in the United States. Everybody else was in Pakistan, working for the company that we outsourced to there. And it went on for like 6 months. It gave me a perfect time to work on my demo reel. I worked on my reel, and I did all the stupid stuff. I can show you some of the stupid stuff I did while I was at. But when I was at Nomon, Alex Alvarez actually used to teach the classes back then. And I asked him one day during class, I said, so what's the best job to have in 3D? And he listed all the jobs. He's like, well, it's based on your personality. If you like to party at night and you'd like to take like 3 months off and go to Ibiza and then come back and get work. He's like, be a lighter or a compositor, because they always work overtime and they're always needed. So I was like, oh, I'm going to become a lighter and a compositor. And then he goes, but if you want to be super useful, be a rigger, because they're there from the very beginning of the show and they're there at the very end of the show, fixing things the entire way because they fix problems. And I was like, rigging, cool. And he goes, yeah, and there's this cool stuff called MelScript. And when I looked at it, it looked like Perl script from web developing. And I had already been doing JavaScript, Perl script, ActionScript, all these web stuff. And I was like, this is easy. So I decided right then and there, I'm going to become a rigger. And
wow.
That's how I became a rigger. And I couldn't get a job in the Bay Area for years because there's only like Lucasfilm, Pixar, Tippett, and that was about it initially. And that was it. And then The Matrix had come out, and then they shut down Escape, ESC. They shut it down, and like 400 visual effects artists were out there looking for work. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to find a job. So I did science animation for a while. I would rig stuff like Giardia and animate Giardia. I got some really bad stuff here. Let me see. Let me bring it up here because I'm done talking here.
It's super interesting. I mean, wow. I mean, from nuclear to rigging, it's a super interesting arc. I mean, wow.
Oh, it says you've disabled screen sharing.
Oh, sorry. Let me. Okay, now it's should be good to go.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I remember I obviously from Spain, we didn't had the possibility to go to Nomon, or at least not for me, but I remember I had a few Nomon DVDs back then. They cost like a fortune it almost cost more money to bring. I mean, the post than the DVD itself.
It was insane. And my very last week at Nomon, they were going from VHS tapes to DVDs, and they were giving away full copies of their VHS. And it was this shrink wrapped VHS thing that was like 3 foot long. And it was all the dynamics, all the modeling, rigging 101, all that stuff. And I won it. And Alex Alvarez was like, congratulations, you just won like $300 of this stuff. And I was like, woo. Yeah, but it was all on VHS tape, so I had to put it in the VHS. I had to get a VHS player and put it in, and then watch and learn at the same time.
The pause was always flickering.
Yeah, it was so bad, so bad. Hold on, let me show you some of this crazy stuff I did here. I turned the audio down, but I was at a company called Stylus Visuals. It was actually pretty cool. This I helped this guy fix some. I found this guy on Craigslist. this older gentleman, and he had some artist in who broke his After Effects, and he really needed to get this stuff done. So it was like an emergency After Effects fix. So I meet this guy, I fix his stuff in After Effects, and I work with him for like 3 months. And then he asked me, "What do you want to do with your life?" And I was like, "Well, right now I'm really into science animation." And so he's like, "Cool, let's film, let's start a science animation company." And so we did, and we formed this place called Stylus Visuals, where we would work on stuff. And this here is Shuanella, and these things are pretty crazy because they almost give off alpha waves that look like brain patterns. And when they get connected together, they form these little tubules that connect to each other. It's almost like neurons. And when they touch metal, um, they can devour any metal, any rock, any material. And so these things could actually devour nuclear waste and give off electricity at the same time. So this is like electrons. These are supposed to be electrons going into a diode. And this is just like some of the first stuff I did here, which was my first crowd level stuff was just using the instancer in Maya. So all the background is all instancer, and then the foreground was all.
Yeah, there's one thing I think it's interesting. It's the people when they think in CG animation, 3D, and this, the first thing they come, it's like, yeah, the big companies like VFX or animation like Pixar, Disney, ILM, Digital Domain. I mean, the big ones. But there is a huge market in other areas like the medical visualization
Yeah,
and robotics, well, machine learning things. There is a huge field outside of these, let's say, famous uh,
yeah.
areas that are. I mean, I I saw recently some my good friend Guillermo, he works in a place in Barcelona that they have this supercomputer, and they do a lot of this visual. He runs the visual department for the supercomputer, so they do the papers visualization for, and this amazing what they do, and it was, I mean,
It's so
um,
much fun that
yeah.
it really is. It's because it's a super challenge, right? You have to. This is like an image the scientists gave me, like this image right here, and they said you have to make that, and then they had to explain to me in terms I didn't understand. Like these are separate molecules, or these are little. I forgot what they're called. It's been so long. But then they form these little tubes, and these tubes there's millions of them inside your body being formed all the time. These microtubules. So I had to figure out a way to do ordered assembly for these guys, and so all I did was I um, I just did particle sims, moved the things to the final position, and then keyed it, and then reversed the animation, and so it looked like it was assembling versus not
uh,
assembling. But this particular one is from the woman who developed Dicer. Have you heard of? I mean, I'm not Dicer, but the CRISPR, the DNA tool.
oh yeah.
We worked for her lab, and we did this animation right here for her. This is a precursor to her, and she would use these animations to get funding from her grants from like the Howard
Mm,
Hughes Medical Investigators.
I see.
And so we would go through all these things. I remember this particular thing right here. They gave us these sheets you can see in the background. This just text file, and it would just be the name of. On the first column would be like the name of the atom, like oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, and then the rest would be the x. The red ones are the XYZ coordinates, and then the 0, 1 at the end is if they're connected or not. And I tried doing this with Flash because Flash lets you read in files, and it would take 8, 9 hours to parse these big files, 20,000 files. I was like sitting there for hours, like, I got to get shit done. And then a friend of mine taught me, he's like, this is how I learned Python. He's like, you should try it in Python. It shouldn't take too long. So I learned just enough Python to parse these files and make the Mel script that was used to. I didn't even use Python because Python didn't exist in Maya at the time. So I used this Python to parse these scripts and then make Mel that would make these little like little connections with between bones and joints like this. So it was forever. It took for it, but it was done like this with 20,000 files. It was done, and 20,000 files. That's 20,000 frames of animation. So it basically went through the very first frame. It would create these things, and then it would animate them and just key the position of them. So this is viral capsid formation, and this is like true math, like just being visualized inside of Maya. It was so much fun making this stuff. I have a funny story about this. Like we showed the client this really cool ball that I rendered in Mental Ray because I was really into Mental Ray at the time, and it had like refractions and stuff. And he just looked at it and goes, "What is that? Well, what is that?" And then I showed him my Play Blast, and I was like, "Well, this is nitrogen. This is oxygen." He goes, "That's what I want. That's what I want right there." And so my boss looks at me and puts his hand on my shoulder, and he goes, "It's going to take a few weeks, and it's going to cost you some extra money." So I just said,
Wise,
I
wise.
shut up, and then he left, and we just hung out for a little bit, made a Play Blast, and then gave it to him a week later and charged him like top dollar for it. He
I
thought
hope
he
he's not listening to the podcast now.
he won't be listening. But we discovered these like automatic, like the actual formation, and then like I was telling you earlier, I got to rig some cool stuff like Giardia, and this is Giardia right here in the Giardia life cycle. We did this for UC Berkeley. And the cool part about this is like I had nobody to learn from except for my Gnomon videos and high-end 3D questions. And
Oh, wait.
I'd go to high-end 3D and ask questions, and then we'd just make all these things. But there was a lot of ordered assembly. Like this is, I don't know if you remember, there was an Alias video that came out about ordered assembly, and it was really hard to get after a few years. But it was talking about how to make particles go to a position versus animating them away from a position.
No, sorry. I was like a soft image guy almost until the last years of exercise. So many of these like alias, wavefrom, Maya videos, I missed all this. The
Yeah,
only
it's
thing
all.
I used it a lot was the rigging, animation friendly rigging from Jason.
Yeah,
That
Jason.
one, I was in Softimage doing stuff in Softimage, but I was watching Jason videos and trying to to find out how to do it the same on Softimage.
You know, about Jason, he right after Lord of the Rings, everybody knew who Jason was. After Lord of the Rings, every rigger knew who Jason was. He was like the most famous rigger for a while because he started off as a rigger and then went to become an animator at Weta, and he animated Gollum. So everybody knew who he was. And I remember just being down on my luck. You know, here I am, a science animator. I'm never going to make it. I'm stuck in this industry now. And I just felt horrible. And Jason showed up to this meet and greet where we had beers in San Francisco. It was at the Red Cat or something. I can't remember. Anyway, he brought along his first reel, and it was so bad. It was so bad. His first reel, and he worked at Alias his like first couple of years, and it was just such a bad reel. And like he stopped it, and afterwards, and he goes, "So just so you know, that was everybody has a first reel. Everybody has a horrible first experience with rigging and Maya." And he says it just takes time. You just have to keep at it, and then you'll end up animating Gollum. And we were all of us there were just suddenly like lifted up. We're like, oh good, because all of us felt like we were struggling. You know, I didn't know a lot of people in the audience, but I knew that you know, these are all riggers there, and they're all like frustrated right now. So but it was uplifting after that. And shortly after that I got my first job. So my first job in like film. Yeah, but
Yeah, that's always cool when you have someone that's already well established and they show you what they did at the beginning, so you feel like more like say grounded to the
yeah,
reality, not like idealized like, oh, these people born doing this amazing stuff. No, everybody has to grin a little before they they do better and
yeah.
better. And it's always, I feel it's not always linear. It's more like a step, so you can be in a plateau for a long time, and then you have little jumps, but the compound after.
Yeah, it's always like ahead. I feel like every company I've been at has kind of collapsed and fallen through because like I worked at Palma Visual Effects, and that one collapsed, and Giant Killer Robots, and that one shut down, and the Stylus Visuals, the Science Animation, that one shut down. But every time I managed to kind of go up every single time, and
Yeah.
it's been like it was an eye opener. It's like, well, maybe I should quit more often and move up.
Yeah,
It's pretty cool.
is that? But yeah, it's amazing, and I know you ended up working on ILM. That it's the most famous company, I will say. Nowadays, I don't think it's the biggest one, but in terms of like prestige, it's. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody knows from Star Wars, ILM. It's.
I had 4 failed interviews before my fourth one. The fourth one ended up making 4 more sub interviews before I finally got the job. So that was like, it was 8 interviews and before I finally got my job at ILM. The first 4 were just, I just wasn't ready and I didn't know it. Like I'm about to show you a reel that I did back in the day that I thought, oh, ILM's going to take a look at this and man, are they going to be loving me? You know, that's what you think. You think that, and then you watch your reel and you're like, okay, this is horrible. So let me just show you this stupid thing here. So that phone number is still alive, by the way. So no, none of you people out there call me. But I showed this stuff, and then let's see, I made these muscles out of NURBS, and I posted them online, and I put it in my demo reel. And there was a guy named Chris Marafi that made a rigging book that before everybody else, and I was like, oh, ILM loves robots. They're gonna love this. Man, they're gonna hire me on the spot. Anyway, I'll just zoom through all this stuff. I also did this other character that I started at Nomon. This is Leon. And Leon would talk to his tail, and I rigged the mouth with all joints, and I had like these face shapes. The joints were being driven by a NURBS curve that was off that would drive like the spline. It was so bad, but you can see the final result here on the left up here. It was. This is all NURBS, by the way. This isn't even a polygons or anything like that. So I didn't know how to model in poly, so everything's NURBS, and that's particles. And this guy's walking the dog, his boss's dog. He's sort of a Anyway, so I showed ILM this, and this is some of the cool stuff I worked on. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get a job. Nope, it would be another couple of years before I got that job. Yeah. Anyway, let's stop sharing now. Here's a picture of Chad Vernon with a mustache. There you go. Just thought I'd share that real quick.
I
Also,
think
have a picture of Chad with no with his glasses off, or his glasses on, because he used to have Coke bottle glasses. Like the week before he got his eye surgery, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to show everybody this photo, but I can't find it anywhere. I looked everywhere.
And he's been in the podcast maybe
I know,
a year,
I give
2
him
years ago. Yeah. I was talking with him the other day, by the way.
Yeah.
Probably he's
He
gonna see this.
did a thing about Blender on your podcast. I remember that.
Yeah. He was experimenting with Blender. I think he finally went back to Maya. It was I don't know exactly.
He's in Unreal mainly now. He says he hasn't touched Maya in like 2 years. I'm like, well, that makes sense. Everybody's in Unreal nowadays. It's all the rage.
Yeah, it's Unreal. It's kicking so strong in so many fronts. You saw the latest, the UE5, Real 5.
I saw it. Yeah, I saw it. And we actually have we've downloaded it, and we've been trying to render stuff in it at work. It's pretty cool. It's pretty amazing. Everybody's pretty blown away by it. So
I did. I just installed, downloaded the sample, seeing that it's 90 gigs or no, it's huge, and I open it and I tried to play just a little bit with the camera, and I didn't have time to play anymore. But
we had one of our experienced Unreal people, our Unreal engineer, and every time they kept trying to click past a certain point, it would crash on them. And I don't know what it was, but he thinks it might have been a memory thing or something. But it was definitely, he had a beefy machine, so we're still trying to figure out what it was that's causing that.
I mean, it's the first beta; it's normal, and I really like also the interface. It's much nicer now. I really like the new.
Yeah,
it's.
I don't mean to bash Unreal, but it definitely feels like they didn't do an update on their interface for a long time. Like, it just felt old. But like, remember in the early 90s, or I mean the early 2000s, all the websites, everything looked like it was shiny candy, and like with a light coming from the upper right side.
Like a little volume spilling thing.
Yeah, little bubble, sort of like bubble and beveled edges. Everything looked like that. So, but the new UI looks really good. Yeah, it looks really good.
I think it's it's gonna. I mean, already it's a full-fledged DCC. I will say it's not like, I will not say just a game engine. does way more.
We're almost able to fully rig there. I mean, the goal at Versatile, where I'm at now, our goal is to put everything like Unreal is the bed, and then everything else is just ancillary to Unreal. So right now we use Maya, but if we can rig in Unreal, if we can create all the content in Unreal and skin in Unreal and create complex deformation in Unreal, then we would just do everything in Unreal. But that's a few years out, guaranteed. But that's where we're trying
Well,
to
at the
head.
speed they go, yeah, maybe less than a few years, but
I know they
yeah,
have like hundreds of engineers at Epic, hundreds of engineers working on so many different aspects of it. So I think it's just a few years out. So,
yeah, for sure.
and they're definitely trying to make their animation tools look like Maya friendly tools. And I bet their rigging will be very similar. Yeah.
Y- Well, yeah. Well, I had Helge also talking about the rigging. It's very interesting the way that how they process and the performance. It's super performant. The like how they do this just in time compilation and goes to the like the I don't know, like the runtime. But the it's very interesting. And also, yeah, there is a lot of nice stuff coming on all areas. I think it's
It's so hard to keep up, honestly. Just this time last year, I was learning the Ziva Runtime Trainer,
mhm,
and it's changed so much in the last year too. There were limitations. You could only do one patch of geometry, one piece of geometry at a time, and now they've got multiples, and you can merge it together. And then I'm pretty sure they're just going to make it automatic. You're just going to be able to select 5 or 6 pieces of geometry and say like, these are deforming, everything else ignore for the Ziva runtime. And it's just because you can do that now. It's standalone applications, kind of everybody.
mhm,
They're just going to build the parts and build it
mhm.
all into one app, but it's pretty
And
sweet.
the ozone from Rich Harry, it's doing the
Yeah,
ozone that is this deformation stack system that can do a lot
yeah.
of nice deformations that before like that was a bit limiting in terms of deformers that you can use, but now with
Yeah,
that it's
I really love the Moto approach. I mean, the Moto
yeah.
approach where this deformer doesn't affect the other deformers, and there's sort of like a normalized weighting at the very end,
Mhm,
right? So, like, I would have moved the verts here with this one, and I would have moved it here with this one, and I would have moved it here with this one, and at the end, the vert is just at its max distance from normal. It feels like it doesn't. Whereas in Maya, like it feels like every deformer adds on or tacks on, and so you have no sort of normalization phase unless you kind
mhm.
of stack everything in through blend shapes. So you've got a ton of blend shapes, and then everything is driving sort of like what Josh Sobel does with all his rigs. Like everything is sort of driving a separate copy of the mesh, and then you blend it in through a weighted blend shape.
Yeah, this is what they call like layered system, like when
Yeah,
you layer one top on the other. You can connect with, yeah, plane shapes or direct connecting with yeah, the geometry things. But yeah, definitely, yeah, I
I
mean
mean,
it solve a lot of stuff, I think.
I've been following where they say Maya's got these new oh, I forgot what it's called, but they were able to almost create kind of what Rich Hurry's doing in Moto right now. I forgot what they're called. Like every
The
deformer now has them in Maya.
the sets, this the groups that you can
Yeah,
tag, the it's called component tags that you can.
yeah, component tags. That's it. Yeah, yeah. So you're able to actually kind of get away with that sort of deformation that Rich is doing right now. But I'm very curious what'll happen with that. I'm just watching that. I don't know. I don't know anybody who's actually implemented that yet. We haven't moved to Maya 2022 yet because we don't want to have to worry about Python 3. But if once we go to Unreal 5, it might be better
Yeah,
to go there. So we should probably start moving.
yeah. The yeah, I yeah, this new, I mean, I had also Will uh in the podcast a few weeks ago,
Wilfred,
and yeah, and I mean it's amazing. I just like you, I'm stuck in older versions of Maya for production reasons, but the latest one, it's, I mean, it looks super juicy for riggers. It's like a kind of a
yeah,
candy shop,
it is.
and I really want to dig on that and spend more time also on the parent of the matrix and things like that, that um they solve a lot of like bottlenecks or like limitations that we had in the past. But it's like, yeah, sadly the production reality, it's sometimes it's not on the edge of the technology.
Yeah, it's going to be a while. I mean, it was painful for me to try and get China to move from 2018 to 2020, and we skipped right over 19. I said we just got to go to 2020. I need various tools that are available for this, and we got to move forward, you guys. It's 2021 right now. We got to move forward.
Mm.
And then 2022 came out, and I was like, oh, this is going to be an uphill battle. I can tell already, but yeah, maybe we
Yeah.
should speak to that.
And sorry, you're talking about China, but maybe we should introduce the people what you doing now, because we were talking about ILM, and we jumped, and
Yeah.
you now working on Versatile. It's
Yeah, so let me continue on with the ILM thing real quick here
okay.
because there was a story there that I wanted to share of complete embarrassment. The I got my I got completely embarrassed in 2006. SIGGRAPH was held in Boston, and I
Mm-hmm.
got on a flight, and sure enough, everybody on the flights from ILM or whatever from the Bay Area, they're heading to SIGGRAPH. I didn't think about that. I ended up sitting next to an R&D engineer, and I told, introduce ourselves, start talking. I said, oh, I'm going to apply to ILM. Oh, cool. I'm going to be hiring people. In fact, I'm doing some of the technical interviews. I was like, okay, great. And he's like, so what do you do? I was like, well, I'm a rigger. And he goes, oh, that's who I'll be interviewing. Okay. He says, so show me your reel. So I have my iPhone, and no, it wasn't an iPhone. It was something else. I forgot, but I had a little tablet of some kind, and I should bring up my iPhone or whatever, the tablet, and I start playing it, and pause, ask me a question, pause, ask me a question. And there were some questions I was all about the ribbon back then, the nerve ribbon strip,
Mm-hmm.
like ribbon
Yeah.
strip. I had managed to perfect that, made a little tool for it, and I was very proud of it. And he asked me how I solve various problems with matrices. And I was like, well, I just use a point and orient constraint. And I didn't really answer the question. He said, well, what about the stair stepping effect? Like if you rotate, or you go, ribbons work great in one angle, but not the other, right? And I said, well, I just do a point name constraint. And then he kept trying to get me to like talk about matrices and vectors and dot products and cross products. And he
Mm-hmm.
kept like hinting at it, like talk about those things. And then, so before the flight ever even got off the ground, our interview was done. And it was the most awkward 4-hour flight all the way to SIGGRAPH, where I knew I
Uh,
was not going to get hired at ILM, which was my dream. and
uh,
and so that was the most embarrassing thing. So after that, I forced myself to learn trigonometry. I forced myself to learn, cross product, dot product, matrices, inverse matrix, multiplying matrices. I figured I have to know all this stuff. And so I mastered that stuff. I would say master. I got what I needed to know for being a rigger. Uh, and then I worked at Image Movers for a few years. And then by that time, I was there with Chad Vernon, and a few other people, and they were all brilliant. Quentin King would take us aside and give us, like, on a dry erase board, would just talk about how a parent constraint works and how an aim constraint works. And he would just sit there and do it with locators on the fly, and he would make it all work, and it looked fantastic. Quentin King is one of the most brilliant people I've ever worked with in my life, and he loved teaching people. And so I have all these vid caps of him back at Image Movers, and I would sit there and watch him over and over and over again and try and do what he did. And I learned how to do things with him, and I worked with brilliant people there. It was a lot of great riggers at that place. It was like a one of those rare breeding places where there
mm-hmm.
was like 10 or 11 riggers, and we were all doing certain things. Like Chad was making deformer plugins, and this guy was working on dynamics, and this guy was doing mush deformers for skin, and this guy was doing stuff for massive, and this guy was doing finaling tools, and it was fantastic. And then so when I finally uh, when Image Movers shut down, like I was one of the last people there. It was like October, and I didn't have a job yet, and everybody else had jobs at Weta and ILM and Sony. And I would put out my reel, and nobody had called me. And so I finally took a job at ILM as the trainer. Like they needed a trainer, and because I was good at explaining things to people, so I took the job as the creature trainer. And that took 4 interviews. I had to do a practice class where I taught somebody. I had to bring my own computer in because they didn't have PyMel there. So I had to bring in, and I did like a mock PyMel training class.
Mm-hmm.
And I had personal interviews with everybody. Finally, I got a job at ILM in 2011. And I was the trainer for 1 week before they said, we need a creature TD. And then they threw me on Pirates of the Caribbean, and it was trial by fire. I was like, you got to sink or swim now. You're at ILM. You got to sink or swim. Do it. So that's how I got to ILM. And I would have been a lifer at ILM for a long time. I was at ILM for 9 years. I loved it. I went from rigging to senior creature TD to I was a trainer the whole time for 7 years, 8 years. And then I became a crowd supervisor. And the only way I became a crowd supervisor is because I was the only one there that had ever worked with Massive ever. And that was from Image Movers. Image Movers, they needed somebody to rig for Massive, and that was me. And I had to write tools, and I had this great Python coder next to me. So, and we wrote it all in PyMel, everything in PyMel. And this is like PyMel 0.9 or 0.7, actually. It wasn't even, it was more of a module than it was anything. It was just a module. And we wrote the whole pipeline in that. And so I learned how to rig for Massive. I learned how to limit my enveloping, use low-res geometry, one-sided geometry. And when I got that there, when I got to ILM and they got one copy of Massive at ILM, they said, does anybody know Massive? And I was like, well, I've worked with it. Fine, you're the guy. And so they just threw me on it.
It sounds like very like a small house of, I mean, I know it's a huge company, but it sounds like, hey.
Well, it was sort of, nobody wanted to learn Massive. Nobody wanted to leave their niche. These are all these senior creature people from ILM. They've been there for 5 years, and none of them wanted to, I don't want to say they wanted to leave their comfort zone, but I would say they were all rock stars at what they did. And they didn't want to be do something in an area that they felt was not creature related. But yeah, I was hungry. I was hungry to do anything at ILM. So my first ILM shot with crowds was, it was a Lone Ranger, and it was the buffalo running next to the train, and that was all done in Massive. And the train splits the herd of buffalo. So I made this stuff in After Effects where the ground turned red and blue, and if it turned blue, you turned right. If it turned red, you turned left. And then I animated that as the ground plane, and then the herd was like, oh shit. And then they started to turn as soon as the ground plane color changed, and that's how I ended up controlling my Massive characters. And I had a few stray ones that kind of turned at the last second. So I would just animate in After Effects, and then I just sim it in Massive, and then it looked better. So it was kind of
I see. So it was like a kind of a animated texture or something that drive the logo like a map.
A ground plane on the texture in Massive, and it could be animated if you put the frame, if you padded the frame just right and put like these little tokens inside the frame attribute, it would somehow put the frame attribute in there and then load it real quick and then sim, and then it would move on. And then the Massive brain, you could sample the ground plane colors, RGB. And if R was a value or G was a value, you could use it to affect the brain and start slowly rotating the root a certain direction. Yeah.
That's cool. And yeah, that's and I think the people is trying to get through the industry right now. There's a good value there. Like we explained, like if you are hungry for like do stuff and you're not afraid to learn new stuff, because sometimes the people who is really good in something is already established, so they are a bit more resistant to try new stuff, or they're comfortable or they like what they do, they want to try. And that's something it's really good. And it's I share some of the I have to say similar like time moments or like that changed my career path, because that I remember when I arrived to Barcelona, I get a job in a studio as an animator. I was the worst animator by far in the studio, but like awful. I mean, my colleagues there were doing like at the time they were doing this animation mentor first. Let's say it was the first, how you say, the first class when they started animation mentor, and they told me how much it cost, and it's crazy. It just I couldn't afford that, and everybody was super good. And one of the guys that was taking care of the motion capture system there left and I was a bit savvy, like doing riggings, things like that. They say, oh, who wants to do the motion capture? And well, okay, I'm the worst animator, so I think it's nobody's gonna like suffer if I do other stuff, because So and I started doing more rigging through like that. Like, who wants to rig? And because I was the worst animator, so okay, I like the rigging part. So start like that. And sometimes it's good. I mean, if you recognize your own weakness or your own strengths, or you try new stuff, and I found out that I have way more fun doing rigging and this kind of technical stuff than what I thought was my call at being an animator. So.
Same. I I took Animation Mentor too. When I was at Image Movers, we got to a situation on Mars Needs Moms, which is one of the worst movies ever made, but it was like just 40 hours a week, right? There was no overtime. Everybody was kind of chilling. So, and we knew the studio was shutting down. So I was like, what am I going to do with my time? Oh, well, we didn't know at the time. And I thought, you know what? I want to try and become one of those rockstar animators. So I went to Animation Mentor too. I failed class 3 and I went back and I had to repeat that class. And so that cost me another $3,000 or whatever, because each class was like $2,000 or $3,000. And then by the time you got done, it was like $15,000 you had spent. But when I got done, I ended up at ILM and I was hanging out with Sean and all these guys and they said, wait, you went to Animation Mentor? And I was like, yeah, here's my reel. And I showed it to him and they passed my reel around all the animators at ILM. And all of them were like, dude, you're the only rigger that knows how to animate. And I was like, oh, I feel good about this. Yeah. I feel good about this. This feels good. Like I didn't waste $15,000 to have like all these people tell me at ILM. I was like, oh, this is nice. This is nice.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think rigor is a discipline that if you know a little bit of you don't need to be a good animator, but you need to know how to animate, even if you later the practice, the time that you invested it, and also modeling.
On this, I blame him because he's the one that became an animator after rigor, and I thought I would follow the same path.
No, but I did the other way. I was an animator, like terrible one, but I mean, I've been hired as an animator. I've been for years, and I've been rigor.
Reel online? Is your animation reel somewhere online?
No.
You have it available to share screens right now?
No, not ready.
Come on. Everybody's got to show their embarrassment. Come on.
Yeah,
all right. I won't pressure.
I don't have it ready. Sorry, but one day I will do this. And it's sad because I don't have my first animations, the really really old ones. I don't have it anymore. I think it was like in a 3DS 3 or something. No, not Max. No.
Oh wow.
And I remember I get some models. I don't know where exactly. Hey. And the basically was like a ovni, like that went to a bar, asked for beer. That's it.
That was it?
Yeah. It's like I
it's better than a shark just eating the camera though.
It was, I mean, and I wish I have it just to have this kind of reference point. Look what I did.
Yeah, it's great when you look back and you're like, oh man, you're so embarrassed. Oh, I look back at some of my early stuff and it's just bad.
Hey, how is his name?
This is Magic. Not named
Magic.
after ILM, but named after Harry Potter because my kids yeah, this is Magic.
Hello. The first dog in the podcast. You nice.
You just got back from a walk. Yeah.
Nice.
Yes. But yeah, Crowds was I mean, eventually we switched to Houdini at ILM. We did Houdini Crowds, and that's how I got introduced to Houdini. And I honestly didn't want to learn Houdini at the first because initially at ILM, I was supposed to become the effects trainer as well. And I didn't feel like I knew smoke and fire. There were all these senior people there that knew, effects way better than me. And I was like, how the heck am I going to train this? I mean, I can tell you how to orient a joint with matrix math, but I can't tell you how to make smoke look like a cumulus cloud and remove, heat and add, color and render. I couldn't tell you any of that stuff. So we brought on somebody else, Frankie Rodriguez, to teach everybody the effects artist, and he had worked at side effects for years. And he gave me all these Houdini boot camp videos, and so I'd go home and watch them. And they were from like Houdini 9, like the nodes weren't even the same, nothing was even named the same, but you had to kind of try and figure it out. But eventually, Vellum came out, and we started doing crowds with Vellum sims. And I loved Vellum. Vellum made sense to me because at ILM I was using cloth. We were using FizzBam, and I could see correlates between each one. And I was like, oh, that's this and that's this. And if I just animate this, it'll work. And it was super fast. Vellum was fast, very quick sim. So I could get nice results fairly quickly. And we did this Aladdin. We did Aladdin, the most recent live action Aladdin.
With
And we
Will
were using
Smith.
what's that? Yeah, we have
The
Will
one.
Smith. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the TDs I was working with, Nathan, and he had a shot, and he was supposed to do it in Xeno, which is an ILM cloth tool. And we were all doing Houdini, and he said, I'm going to do it in Houdini, and they're never going to know. So he actually does it in Houdini and exports. We found a script that would allow us to export out as this caching method that we called the Sim Delta cache. So he would, in a format that we could, a PDB cache that we could export out, and then we could pull that into Xeno and just use it to run it as a cache. And it wasn't sim, but it was cache. And so we would export it out from there and make an Alembic. And he would get notes on it, and he did it completely in Houdini. And then later we told everybody that we had done it in Houdini, and it was 8 hours to sim this cloth in Xeno on the farm. And he was able to do like 4 or 5 iterations in 8 hours and get it looking very nice, all in the same time when we were getting one iteration. Man, we really made a lot of people mad about that. I was told not to do that again, and I shouldn't have authorized that. And as Crowd Soup, I'm not allowed to do that. And we got in trouble. But I basically argued back. I was like, Houdini's got this tool. We're using it in crowds. It's effectively working to do simulations in ILM. So I think we should start exploring it. And, the only issue was licensing. That was the only issue. They weren't against Houdini as a tool. They were just like, hey, man, you know how many artists we have at this company? You know how many licenses that costs? And Xeno costs us nothing. But Houdini costs us a lot, so they just decided to stick with that.
Yeah, I remember in the previous company I was working, we had Qualoth, and we have Cloth, of course, and it was a similar situation when, new project, and let's say, okay, we can have Qualoth for only 3 license for 2 months, and sorry, no, we cannot do it in this time, so okay, everything in Cloth.
Yeah. Well, N-Cloth, I mean, we did the entire Christmas Carol in N-Cloth. Everything was done in N-Cloth. It works. It gets the job done. Yeah, it's pretty decent tool.
Yeah, I think it does really well what it does, and it depends of the task. And sometimes it's even better than depends. Always.
Yeah. I mean, the tool. I think you pointed me to a tool, the Zoo tools, the Wrinkle tool. That's a N-Cloth tool.
Oh yeah, Andrew. Yeah, they use the as a like the end cloth, but they did this nice interface and like workflow that you can just generate quickly tools like wrinkles, sorry, for cloth, and I guess for skins and things. Everything that you need wrinkles, it's kind of really neat workflow, and I really like it. I mean,
I've been using Mush 3D to do that because Mush, you can just drag a thing in it, and it knows if you're stretched lengthwise or widthwise, like warp or weft, and it knows how to add the wrinkles in. Like if it's bunched up this way, then it makes the wrinkles go this way. And if you have something bent, it actually turns that's a pretty good tool. I just wish that brush existed in Maya, because if that brush existed in the sculpt tools, that would be the most amazing.
I've been in contact in the past with Luis, that is the developer, and I think if you check in his Vimeo, I think he had some kind of Maya tool working in some point, or it was like under the hood engine. I don't know exactly what, if it just started one and ended up being like a standalone application or something like that. But it has some nice demos on his Vimeo that it shows it's working on.
Send me a link to that later after this, because I'm
sure.
curious about that. I have right now. I can talk about it a little bit. At Versatile, we're pitching a space movie in China, and we have a spacesuit, and they want to have similar wrinkles as they had on the movie Gravity, right? So
Mm.
when a character's moving their arms up like that, they want to have a puffy suit that has a little bit of wrinkles here. And I was going to sim it all in Houdini, shot by shot. That's one option, but they have like 50 or 60 shots. It would take a long time, and you'd have to nail the sim setup
Hmm.
first. And they want it all to work in Unreal, so they don't want it to be Olympics.
Uh-huh.
So the only answer that I could really come up with was Ziva Real Time Trainer, and which is really cool because you can train it in poses. Like I could do a ROM
Yeah.
in on the spacesuit in various positions, twist and turn kind of this, and I can just go through and sculpt those keyframes in Mush 3D
Hmm.
on the ROM, export it out as an Olympic, and then so I have the Olympic, I have an FBX with no wrinkles, and then I have a REST OBJ, and that's all it takes to train in Ziva. And then when it's done, you get this little tool, this little Ziva ZRT file, and you bring it into Unreal, and you hook it up to your FBX.
Hmm.
And when your FBX goes into that pose, it deforms the geometry the way you want. It's
Mm.
perfect for what we have, but it just takes a lot of work to sculpt every pose. And right now, my 3D keeps crashing on me. I don't know if it can handle. This is a high res mesh, and
Uh,
it's
I
like a
see.
20
Y-
gig Olympic, and it keeps crashing on me. So
Wow.
that's why you've seen me recently posting that I need alternatives right now. So
Yeah, I did similar things in the past. Not that high resolution, of course, but and normally what I do is I prepare like a range of motion, like simple range of motion, and I simulate with thin cloth
mhm.
and get the key poses, and then in this case I don't need to go to Unreal. So what I do is I extract the poses with that. And the problem is, well, you need to normalize. So you cannot do like this. You need to do first the elbow, then the shoulder, then the elbow, and then do the combinatories, things like that. So with the shapes tool from Ingo, Brave Rabbit.
Yeah, I love the shapes tool. The first version of the suit I did, I went to every single pose and did the shapes, and then they swapped the model out, and the vert count was different, and none of the shape.
Ah,
It went from being pre-wrinkled to not being pre-wrinkled, and then so I mean, it was like a marvelous designer model they bought online,
uh,
and then they took it back to their modeler. So the point count was different. So none of my corrective shapes worked, but I do love the shapes tool. It's really good. I had them working with all the vector-based RBFs. It looked really sweet. It looked really cool. And they swapped the model, and I was like, "Oh man,
ah,
I don't know
that's
how
sad.
I'm gonna do this. This really
But
sucks."
but the thing, it's like, well, if you use the yeah, I use the like a lot the cloth simulation to bake plane shapes. I didn't use the I think Andrew tool, the wrinkle from Sue.
Yeah,
It's newer, but I didn't use it. Well, no, was not there. But yeah, yeah,
I'm
helps.
gonna play with it tonight. I think I'm gonna play with it tonight just to see. I have just on one pose. I'm gonna move the arms up like this and see if I can get that to bunch
Mm.
up using the zoo tool, and see if Andrew's tool works. Because if it does, it's a win-win. I just need to save out that pose
Mhm.
and bring it in, and with shapes, I can just use it to make the shape, the corrective shape, and then just drive it in, and then export out Olympic from that. But I mean, I know I have a pretty good idea that the Ziva tool is going to be pretty awesome in the coming future.
Yeah,
You're going to be
yeah.
able to take the deformation off of any piece of geometry and any FBX as long as you've got it paired up, and it's going to be able to figure out all the geometry pieces of names and
Mm.
positions, and then it's just going to bring deformation real smooth into Unreal. So I know those guys, and I know they're working on sewing all that stuff together to make it real simple.
I saw the latest demos they have with the facial.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's, it's amazing. It's so, the detail. It's and
Yeah.
they run it on real time. That it's the
Well, the way they do that is very simple. They're using the Ziva runtime, the
yeah.
Ziva real-time trainer. So they have 4D capture. They capture all this face. This is what we're doing too. We're capture a bunch of motion on a face, and then they make sure you capture a front-facing 2D camera.
Mhm.
So like in our current situation, we're capturing with the real like infrared camera that's going to be mounted to the head. We're
Mhm.
also capturing that at the same time, so that we're going to use that as like the training for the training model for the
Mhm.
face. So when the face sees this, when the camera sees this in the future, it'll know which shape to drive on the 3D mesh, and you're using machine learning to get that.
Mhm.
So we'll clean up a mesh, we'll put it up there, and we can, it'll even be an actress-driven mesh, and eventually we'll just use the three-way sort of machine learning model where we're going to use that 2D image coming from the camera right on the infrared camera right on their face, and when it sees that, it'll know what position to put the geometry in, and it'll just use the Ziva runtime, or it'll use some other tool to do it. Yeah, I think I'm guessing that Epic is making their own training tool. I'm guessing. I mean, I'm just guessing, but I don't know if it's true or not. But if I were running an engineering department at Epic, I would say that this is one of the things I would definitely be working on right now as a product.
Well, yeah, I well, I guess they would be doing all the kind of super nice technology that you can imagine. If I mean, what they did with MetaHuman, it's just like,
Yeah.
it's insane. It's crazy. I was telling you of before, like I was trying with Gear now to connect the stuff, and they have also the RBF solver on the MetaHuman. I didn't know
Yeah.
that they have it there.
Yeah. I don't know how to edit those. I mean, I saw that
Yeah,
there's the post
I don't know either.
builder that Chris Evans put out up
Yeah.
on GitHub, but there's no documentation. I couldn't get buttons to work. I couldn't even get editing to work. I didn't know how to get it to work. So I just sitting there, I had a MetaHuman open and I had that tool open, and I was able to select the RBF solvers and blenders, but I couldn't edit it. I couldn't do anything. So I just didn't know. It's a mystery to me, because once they get that over there, I mean, that stuff translates back and forth
Yeah.
to Unreal. As long
I
as you
think
have a little
I
DNA file.
have to invite Chris Evans to the podcast, and then
I think he just
we
went
can.
to Facebook. I think I just saw that on LinkedIn. I think he went to Facebook somewhere. Like,
Oh,
I don't
really?
know. I
I
think
will check. I
there
will
might be
check.
multiple Chris Evans, just so you know, but I don't know. But there's one Chris Evans I'm linked to, and I think he went to Facebook recently. So yeah, I'd like to
I
get some answers.
Yeah, but yeah, it's really cool because they have it the solver on Maya. I was trying with Maya 2018,
Yeah.
and I guess the same solver will be on counterpart on Unreal. So if you run your wrinkles and stuff with that one, you have it. I mean, it's basically there.
I mean, as long as it's in the DNA file, right? Because those little DNA files that come with .dna files that come with MetaHuman, they're right next to
Oh
the
yeah,
full rig, the body rigs.
yeah.
Like, they got to travel along. I think as long as that's near the FBX, when you open the FBX, it might be able to connect everything up.
Oh,
Because we've only been just changing motion and bringing the motion back over into Unreal. So I think as long as it's already operating in Unreal, and you have the Maya version, then you have parity. Then all you have to really worry about is motion, just getting motion back and forth. But yeah, when the boss in China saw that, Leo Lee, when the guy who owns Versatile Media, when he saw MetaHumans, it was like, hold the presses, stop everything we're doing. This is where we're going now. And I was like, it's true. It's true. This is where the world is going. Like these really good deformations.
Because before MetaHuman, I mean, to do one setup this quality, I mean, first, there is not too many places in the world that can do that level. I'm not talking about. I remember like sometimes like people contacting, hey, can you do this as a freelance? And they say no. Sorry, but no. It's no. I mean,
I can
you
give
need
you
a
a
massive data set only to start with the scans, and also like the technology to process this data set to get the.
Well,
and it's I mean, no, there is not that many places in the world that can do
are you
that.
familiar with Dem Bones, that EDA tool?
Yes. Yeah.
Because if you think about it, if you have a sequence like an Olympic sequence that just has a bunch of face shapes, I mean, it's just face performance, right? You can convert that to enveloped bones.
Yeah.
So if you can somehow pair that up with some controls, like, you basically can build the MetaHuman rig, I'm guessing, right? Because it's all just parts. So like the MetaHuman rig knows if you just isolate this little area here, and I move the cheek up here and I move the cheek control, it might be just like, to get this shape to move, if I can isolate that shape in Dem Bones, what 500 bones have to move? Because you can make like 250 bones for your
Yeah.
face.
I didn't use the well. Them bonds are. I think it's Ubisoft maybe who's
EA,
the
it's EA.
and uh, I have been a this and Andrew. I don't remember his name now. I was chatting with him the other day. Uh, he did this. It's not them bonds, but it's similar. It's how it called soft like the composition. So basically, it's the same. You train with a like and deformer, whatever is the deformer, to
Yeah,
decomposite this in a like a joint structure with. And yeah, it depends how you have your training data. You can create joints, but if you use like pure like random data, it generates like a random joints
yeah,
around their face. And if you want to use a very specific set of joints that are more animatable, controllable with then is when it gets really tricky. I think the algorithms that run this, and also how do you feed the data set to train this. I think, I mean, the base is there probably. Yeah,
yeah,
you're right on that. But the I think what Trilateral and Epic Games have behind that, the
yeah,
technology, it's light years of just the Dan Bones thing. Honestly, I think there's way more going on there. That without counting the that you can morph the characters and make some match and everything works flawlessly.
yeah.
That
I
it's
mean,
black magic.
it's almost like a crowd artist's dream. They're like, because as a crowd person, we were always doing variations and take the hat off of this person and
Mm,
make this person thinner, make this person larger, make him shorter, taller. And it's like I like their little three-way triangle thing where you can just drag it and get the face shape and then get your body and boom,
yeah.
you're done. And then I mean, it's almost like a crowd artist's dream, but it's also a creature TD's dream too. Be able to take any model for clothing and whatever and just kind of wrap it to that and wrap deform it to the body of a known vert orient. Because I saw several of the characters. They have like the older characters and the younger characters, and I wonder if they have different vert counts on those to get the wrinkles on there. Because I haven't looked at the face point count at all.
I think they have the different LODs, but I think the probably it's the same universal topology.
Yeah, I
But
would
yeah,
guess it is.
I
Yeah,
didn't check it, but I had my guess. But yeah, I found it also very interesting that reality becoming like the mainstream in terms of how available is for everybody right now.
yeah,
Like especially with Unreal Engine and you have the Quixel mega scans available. You have the engine that is coming out with it. It's I mean it's super powerful with all the lighting and everything. You have the super realistic humans that you can create and I that not maybe 1 year ago, for
yeah,
instance, it was very expensive to generate this kind of qualities, and right now it's becoming like the let's say not cheap because it's very good quality in terms of quality, but it's more like for everybody can have access to that quality right now. Other thing is how you use that. No, that's
that's
same.
where I was actually thinking about that today while I was people that are riggers are in a really good position because we know how to get geometry to move, pixels to move on screen, and we are sort of in the catbird seat for becoming the new kind of filmmaker. I mean, we are, because if you think about it, we can get a model, we can rig it, and we can do everything. We can even use simple tools to render it, even get textures. As a one person, you can do this. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
it's hard to learn substance and make it look cool, but to make a simplified cartoon, like a very simple cartoon, you can totally do it. And I was just
Mhm.
looking online, like at Mike Judge's first film, like his Inbred Jed, and it was all drawn, hand drawn, and it was called Homemade Cartoons or whatever. But that's how he launched his filmmaking career, was just like these little simple cartoons. And I was thinking,
Mhm.
there's going to be some riggers, hopefully maybe me, I don't know, but hopefully there's some riggers out there that are going to make some cartoons that are going to be hilarious, and they're going to be all done by the rigger. They don't need anything like the voices. Everything will be done by them. They're just gonna. I mean, have you seen the most recent Netflix special by Bo Burnham?
Oh no, sorry. Which I don't know.
He's a comedian, and he was during COVID. He was in one
Oh,
room, and he filmed everything, edited everything, did the lighting for everything,
oh
did
no,
the music, sang, did the audio recording. Basically, a one-man show. Did everything for Netflix for a comedy special. Just one person.
no, I didn't.
Everything.
I didn't know
I
that.
thought, you know what? We're at a spot with the tools are getting better, and the rigging tools are getting faster. And right now, making a toony character and being able to make a short film out of it, it's getting easier and easier.
Yeah,
And even for 2D, I mean, have you seen Adobe's Character Creator, where
I
it
know the
takes
tool,
a
but
webcam and tracks your face to move the face on a 2D character?
I didn't touch it. But I know I follow. I check Cartoon Brew from time to time,
It's
and they
pretty
have
cool.
always advertisement there. Yeah, so I saw it.
Pretty cool because you could take that and then use something like EB Synth to
Yeah,
drive like a cartoony face or even drive angles, have it machine learn another
yeah.
face, like a human face even.
Hmm.
So you could even like take this face right here and just have it move, and just have it's not even like deep fake, but also
Hmm.
with the advent of deep fake now too, you can just pretty much do anything you want. You got to have a funny
Yeah,
story and you can do it.
but I think it's like not even. I mean, for cartoony, I think cartoony depends. I mean, cartoony there is a way like I mean, can be simple, can be more complex, but like realistic. If you go and take what you have on libraries right now, you
Yeah.
can do like very uh, let's say high-end looking film, like short film,
Yeah.
with minimum resources, basically.
Yeah. Minimum. Yeah. Minimum.
Yeah,
There's got to
and
be a
it
lot of
cartoon
good.
depends how you go. I think it's gonna be the new expensive kind of thing if you go cartoon, like especially when it's I mean, cartoon has been always like the easiest, or not the easiest, but I would say the more affordable right now. But now will be in the both sides of the spectrum. Will be the most affordable because it will be always the most affordable because you can do tell stories with just a ball and a box, so it can be very simple. And will be the most expensive. And in the middle will be the hyper real, I think,
Yeah. Well,
or at least some point.
Hyperreal, they're really pushing that. There's so many
Yeah.
tools like MetaHuman right now. They're really pushing it.
Yeah.
I just feel like we might get too many MetaHuman projects in the next 5 years. Like everybody's using it, so everything looks the
Mhm.
same.
But I mean, it's humans. I mean,
Yeah.
all the movies are humans. It's not you cannot change that, I guess. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's where other like everybody can shoot a great movie with an iPhone, but not everybody will do it. Uh,
Yeah.
so it's gonna be
Well,
the
they
same.
won't
So
edit it. They won't think about camera angles. They won't think
yeah,
about timing. They won't even
um,
think about story. They'll just like, I can do this.
yeah,
It's got to be funny or it's got
yeah.
to have great character
It's
stuff.
gonna be reduced to storytelling and the basics of
Yeah.
narrative. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's very exciting. I think.
Yeah. It's pretty
I'm
cool.
I'm just yeah. I'm very looking forward to see what's coming the next
Yeah.
years on
I
this.
am too.
Sorry, I maybe we have to start wrapping up here, but I just want to go back to one of the bullet points that we had here, and it's in versatile.
Yeah.
Like uh,
Yeah.
were commenting before that you're looking for people. If you want to
Yeah,
plug
I mean,
there,
okay, so Versatile is we are a virtual production company. I made the leap from ILM because I felt like this is where the world was going, and I didn't feel like being a crowd soup at ILM was going to get me there. And I knew we were moving toward Unreal, and I knew this. So I was like one of the first 3 employees in the Vancouver office, and we started brainstorming like how are we going to do this, where are we going to get people, and now we got our studios open. COVID hit and things delayed and we all work from home, but now the studio's open and we're pitching projects. We're going to be doing our own intellectual property for streamers, like episodic sci-fi shows and stuff, and I really need some people to come on and rig. um, Initially I was covering that base, but now it's getting to the point where there's 4 or 5 bipeds waiting on me to get to them, and it's like I don't have enough hours in a day to be CG soup and be the rigging person or the rigging lead, so we actually need people. So Vancouver's a hot property right now. There's so many people and so many companies, Netflix and Braun and Sony, and everybody's hiring here. And ILM just announced 4 new projects, so they're hiring too. So it's hard to find creature TDs, but I really think this is a great place. Like, you get in a small studio and you can learn from a lot of senior people. We've got Matt Welford, who is like visual effects supervisor extraordinaire. He's been on all these shows, worked on Lord of the Rings and Avatar. I mean, he's the head of our creative department right now. So we got a lot of great people. We just need riggers and modelers and people to come on. It's just we don't have a name yet, right? We're sort of the new kid on the block, and we and our website was broken, and now it's working, and we just need to get people. So
Yeah, I will add the link to the website on
that'll
the
be pretty cool.
on the blog description notes. Yeah, thank you so much, Geordie, for
Yeah, this is
your time.
awesome.
It was a super fun talk, and I'm
Yeah.
really glad we did it, because I think it took a little bit to schedule, but finally we managed to do it. So thank you
Yeah,
so much.
I love to talk rigging with other rigging nerds. You know, my wife hates it, but she's like, "You go have your hour and a half and enjoy every bit of it." Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. You have a good night.
You-
Oh wait, it's morning for you. You have a good morning.